Mental Health Awareness Day. The average person encounters many stressors in their life. Kids, work, social media, the current election cycle, all crazy, right? Well, joining me right now in the studio is Nicole Ibarra. She is with Kaiser, and you are a marriage and family therapist. You also have a whole bunch of other really fancy titles that are really super important. Joining us right now, can you kind of unpack a little bit? I mean, we were talking about how the Surgeon General recently said a lot of us are very stressed out. I think a lot of us are, especially like with the election. How do we manage all of this these days?
There's a lot going on in the world today. So election, like you mentioned, you know, there's still active shootings that are happening. Right. Parents are really stressed out trying to juggle, you know, their profession.
I'm juggling knives at times.
Juggling everything.
Right.
I mean, there's no time to sleep. There's very little time for self-care. So I just want to validate that it is really difficult to do it all. One thing that personally helps me, and I think different things work for different people, but something that kind of keeps me sane is spending time each day in the morning and the evening implementing just a little bit of self-care. So I wake up, I exercise for 30 minutes before my kids wake up, before I have to do the hustle and bustle of school drop-off and get myself to work. And then in the evening, you know, even if it's just a half an hour of reading a book or watching a show, just prioritizing some kind of self-care. Kind
of infusing something in. I was reading something yesterday about if you have like a bad day, it doesn't have to blow up your entire day. That if you have like little morsels, and I was thinking, okay, what's gonna make me happy, maybe a song. So I was like singing on the way to work this morning. Just something to kind of, you know, reset us maybe?
I love that. And having things that you look forward to too, right? Whether it's a vacation or if that's not something that you can do, you know, having a couple days to take off of work, getting yourself a massage, just something that you're looking forward to get you through the week can be helpful.
As a mom, the vacations kind of stress me out because then I start to think about like packing and what am I going to do with the dog and what am I going to do, like all that kind of stuff can really kind of bubble up in me.
Yeah.
Kids, we were talking about kids and so forth. How are we doing? The pandemic really caused a lot of mental health issues. How are kids these days?
You know, I think that's a great question. We were seeing that kids were relatively behind for a number of years. You know, my son, for example, he was in kindergarten the first year of the pandemic. So that really shifted a lot of things socially.
So hard.
It's really, really difficult. We're seeing still about 1 in 5 kiddos struggling with anxiety and depression. It could be more, but that's the amount that are kind of reporting at this point from ages 12 to 17. But we are seeing some return to normalcy, which is great. We're seeing sports, you know, kids getting back involved in the community. We're seeing parents, you know, more involved in the kids' school, and that part I think is really neat, but there's still a lot more that we can do to support our kids because there's a lot of pressures with social media, with academics. You know, they're juggling a lot too in their little minds, and there's a lot of things that we can do to support them.
And it's hard. I mean, in our family, I have twin daughters, and they're constantly fighting with each other. They're on Snapchat with their friends, and, you know, and middle school is very difficult and so much drama. I mean, how do you support, especially those teens and their brains and they're not developed and so forth? So it's just kind of, again, I don't want to say juggling with knives, but that's kind of what goes through my head sometimes.
Yeah, and I think each family is different, but really finding a balance that works for you. So a balance of family time, a balance for them with their friends and their social time as well, making sure that they have enough time at the end of the day for homework. I know kids can get really overwhelmed if we overschedule them. You know, my kids, for example, dance, gymnastics, softball, there's a lot going on. And I know that they can get a little bit more stressed when it's just one thing after another. It's a lot, for sure. So making sure that they, you know, if it's the weekends, they can have a little bit of downtime and really limiting their social media, especially if they're a little bit older, I think is really important too, right?
I'm always constantly going, you know, do your laundry, do this, get off your phone, you know, kind of like a traffic cop of all that stuff. I want to circle back as far as the election. I mean, it is a very emotional time. Any advice on dealing with friends who have different political opinions and family members and so forth. And we were listening to Tim Walz's brother doesn't have a great relationship with different political perspectives. How do we best deal with all that?
I think it's so stressful because we care so much, right? And there's a lot that feels outside of our control. And one thing that can help with anxiety in general is noticing what it is that you can control, and also noticing when you need to turn the volume down, when you might need to turn it up. So for example, you know, if getting involved in the community is something that helps, you know, be an activist, get out there. My parents, they've been writing letters to support their candidate that they're wanting to, you know, see come to presidency. And also noticing when you might need a break from it, right? When it's too much. And then if you have loved ones who have different views than you know, finding some boundaries there and even talking about it. I have a close friend, and we've actually discussed many times that this is just a topic for us that we don't talk about, and that feels really healthy for our friendship. So I think having those boundaries for yourself and relationships is really essential right now, and also taking care of yourself and figuring out things you can do throughout the day to kind of slow your system down.
I appreciate that. Well, Nicole Ibarra, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some tips and so forth. Control what you can control, right? Kind of approach. We'll be right back after the break.
Thank you.